Tax was a big focus too last night, wasn't it? Your housing spokesperson, Phil Twyford, has said that a land tax and a wealth tax and an asset tax are on the table in this tax working group. I just want to talk briefly about a land tax. Can you rule out a land tax on the family home?
As I've said, the family home is not a land tax. Obviously, as you know, applies to land, not homes, though, Guy. But as I've said, nothing that we're looking at will affect a family home. I've been really clear on that.
So when you get your rates bill, it has a land value too, right?
I'm ruling out the family home, Guy. The rest I'm leaving to our experts. Right. I don't want to predetermine what they may come back on. Yeah. And we can have a back and forth about detail every single week on Radio New Zealand. I'm happy to do that.
I'd be happy to do that too.
Except what I can say is that I want to look at making sure we deal with the housing crisis and we have a fair taxation system.
I just want to clarify this point. You can rule out then a land tax on the family home.
On the family home, but again, land tax applies differently, Guy, but on the family home, absolutely.
So what might a land tax apply to?
Again, I'm not going to go into the detail of what our expert working group is going to be able to do themselves. They may actually come back and say, as I've said before, that what we've got in New Zealand is sufficient with our extension of the Bright Line test, but they may not. I want the experts to have the room to be able to present to me the best options for improving housing affordability, because after 9 years, we have a crisis, and I'm not willing to sit back and let that continue.
Okay, but if you own land in Auckland or Wellington or wherever, you're saying that if that land is a family home,
they're going to
taxed.
Survey all of the options. I'm going to consider
all
of the options,
is it an option?
And then we'll make a decision.
Because a lot of people who own, I can't remember exactly how many, but the more than 1 million people who own a home in New Zealand will be wanting to know this. Would they potentially be subject to a land tax on their family home?
That is, Guy, again, an absolute hypothetical. We are allowing that working group to look at all of the options to improve home ownership in New Zealand.
You can't rule out a land tax on the family home?
I have ruled out affecting the family home, yes.
That won't happen on a land tax. You ruled it out on a capital gains tax.
I will not have a tax on the family home.
Okay. So what might a land tax apply to?
Again, Guy, what I'm trying to do is make sure we leave enough room for us to explore all the options on two things. Making sure that we improve home ownership. One of the reasons we are even having this conversation is because the government hasn't done that. The result has been that the Reserve Bank is now requiring that in order to buy a home in Auckland, you have to have $150,000. I'm not going to let that persist. And yes, there's probably ways.
Are you going to withdraw the LVR ratios?
We've always disagreed with the fact that they've had to be put in place, but we accept there was no choice for the Reserve Bank because this issue has continued to persist and the government hasn't acted.
If it's only about housing, and that's what you've kept coming back to, and that'll resonate with a lot of people.
And in the fairness of our tax system.
Because, I mean, why would you tax the capital gain in a business if it was only about housing?
It is. I am very fixated on housing, that is true.
I know, but why would you tax a farm or a business if it was only about housing?
Well, we're not proposing to do that. We're proposing to allow the experts...
But you've said that they are on the table,
we're allowing the experts to look at everything, to give us the best options available to improve our housing crisis and to make our tax system fairer. You know, because we do know, for instance, that someone who flicks off 3 homes isn't treated in the same way as someone who goes and works a 40-hour week.
But no land tax on a family home.
As I've said, Guyon, I'm going to let the experts do their jobs and come back to me with a set of options.
I'm still confused about that. I'm still confused about it.
That's because you're confusing the way a land tax and a capital gains tax works, and I'm trying to make sure I leave the experts to do their job, and I will make sure that the focus is on home ownership.
Okay, but if I own a property, let's say in Wellington, and the land value of that land is $500,000, are you saying that there will not be a land tax on that?
I'm saying that we are not going to affect the family home, and I've been consistent on that.
Right. Thank you very much for your time and for coming into the studio this morning. Do really appreciate your time. That is the Labour leader, Jacinda Ardern.